Welcome to another episode of Leadership and Lifestyle Coaching with Ryan David. I'm Ryan David. Now, this episode is not intended to offer any coaching per se. With this video, what I'd like to do more of is offer up my personal views on the topic of God and maybe share with you a philosophy of mine and a way of thinking about the topic that maybe starts a conversation for you and gets you to ask yourself some questions and possibly ponder on the topic itself. Now, the first thing that I want to make sure I do and that I make sure that I make very clear and I preface this video with is the understanding that I want everyone who watches this video to understand before I even get into the conversation about my views and the topic of God. I want everyone to understand that I don't take the topic of faith, religion, or spirituality lightly at all. I know this is a very serious topic, a very meaningful topic, a very powerful topic, and it's very important to a lot of people. So this is not a haphazard, impulsive, opinionated attack on spirituality or religion or any sort of beliefs in particular at all, by any means. I put a lot of thought into my take on religion and spirituality, and it's with great reservation that I even put this information into video form and put it out there to share. However, that is my intention, to just share information and share my thoughts about the topic. It is my personal view and my personal take and my personal opinions on the topic and on the matter. So by no means is this video an intention or is this video intended to change your beliefs or get you to shift or alter your way of thinking or your belief system at all. It's really more just sharing information to facilitate a conversation possibly about maybe an alternative way of thinking or a new perspective on a topic that, quite honestly, very many people are either afraid to talk about or continue to have the same conversation. However, I think that anytime there's a conversation that we're hesitant to have, oftentimes that's the conversation that we need to have. And so for me, this was an opportunity to start this conversation, have this conversation, or at least initiate the conversation in this direction just to see how it goes and also maybe to contribute to the conversations that are already out there. So again, it's with great reservation, but also with great respect that I have this conversation and I share this information and these personal views of mine with you on video. So I also want to point out that in terms of religion or in terms of beliefs, I want to point out a really fundamental way of thinking about these things that I have for myself. And I only have two rules, and I want to share those two rules with you in terms of religion or beliefs. Two rules that I have when it comes to a person's belief system or a person's religion. The only two rules that I have are, does it benefit you? Does it help you improve your life? Does it make the quality of your life better? Does it help you be a better person? That's the first question that I ask. And the second question that I ask is, does it do that without hurting or negatively affecting or impacting anyone or anything else? If the answer to those two questions is yes, I fully support 100% back you in that belief system or that religion or whatever it is. That's how I gauge beliefs. That's really my criteria. If it helps you be a better person and doesn't hurt anybody else, I fully support that belief or that belief system. So my only criteria when it comes to beliefs, and religion can fall into this category, are those two things. Does it help you be a better person, and does it do that without hurting anybody else? If the answer is yes, regardless of my own personal views or beliefs or opinions, I absolutely support and will back that way of thinking. And so that belief system really applies, not just to yourself, but to others. Again, generally speaking in beliefs. And I learned this from Tony Robbins quite some time ago, which was, don't judge beliefs by whether they're right or wrong or good or bad. Judge beliefs on whether they're empowering or disempowering. And that goes for yourself and your own beliefs. You can ask yourself the question, what are my beliefs, and do they help me or do they hurt me? And do I have a belief system right now or a particular belief that's disempowering? It's leaving me in a negative state or it's preventing me from taking action. Check your beliefs. And if your beliefs are disempowering, whatever they are, whether it's a certain religious belief, a certain way of thinking, anything that you have that's a belief that is disempowering, let's get rid of that. Not from a judgmental standpoint, but just from the standpoint of it's not helping you, it's not benefiting you. So judge beliefs on whether or not they're helpful or hurtful to yourself and to others. So that's my criteria. I want to point that out ahead of time so that no one thinks that I'm anti this religion or against this or against that. That's not the case at all. And by no means is this actually a video about any one particular religion. It may speak to you in terms of your particular religion, but that's not the nature of this conversation and the nature of, at least that's not my intention with this video. My intention again with this video is to share with you my thoughts on, first of all, the question of whether or not one believes in God, and second of all, my understanding and my definition of God, and then And then also maybe a conversation about the bigger picture as to how God relates to us in our lives on an everyday basis, possibly. So those are the two preface things I wanted to preface this video with, the two criteria, two things I want to make sure I point out, make sure that we understand before we go any further that I do take this conversation very seriously. It's important to me. I spent a lot of time thinking about this. I've spent a lot of time, many years, thinking about and contemplating and working through the idea and the concept of God and religion and spirituality. So it's not something that's just, again, impulsive or just another video for me. I spent a lot of time thinking about that. And also the judgmental standpoint as far as someone's beliefs being right or wrong. The view I have of beliefs holds still for anybody in any particular beliefs, and those are the criteria, the ones I just shared with you, as far as what's how I judge or how I gauge beliefs, whether they're mine or anybody else's. That being said, I do have my own personal beliefs and my own personal opinions about a number of things that relate to religion and belief systems. So you might be saying, okay, well, that's all fine and well, but what business does that have, or a conversation about that have, on a channel about personal leadership and holistic lifestyle coaching, which is the nature of my channel and the main intention of this channel. It's me bringing you my expertise and the strategies that I've used in my own life and that I've help others use to improve the quality of their lives. Yes, when I first started this channel, that was absolutely my main intention and my purpose, to create a platform to be able to do that, to share that expertise, to share that knowledge, and to share information in the area of personal leadership so I could help individuals improve the quality of their lives. That's absolutely what my channel is dedicated to. Second, because beliefs in general, beliefs just overall, play such a huge role in our lives, it's almost irresponsible for someone like myself whose life coaching is rooted in psychology not to address or discuss the significance and the importance of beliefs, no matter what they are, because regardless of what beliefs I'm going to talk about, religious in nature or otherwise, beliefs are beliefs, and they have a very powerful effect and impact on our behavior and on our psychology. So to not discuss beliefs at all, let alone specific beliefs such as beliefs in God per se, that would be somewhat irresponsible on my part. So I think it does have a place in the conversation on this channel. But maybe most importantly, as it relates to conversations like this one today, this channel is an opportunity for me, and I thought of this when I first started the channel, but not as much as I realized it after I started the channel. This channel is an opportunity for me to speak my truth. It's an opportunity for me to share my truth and speak my reality and my truth to the public, to YouTube, to share my truths and speak who I am and speak my truths to you and share those, not in an attempt to convince you to adopt my same thoughts or beliefs or opinions, as much as for me to put my beliefs and share my beliefs and share my truth, share those in a way that I could then see them obviously outside of myself and manifesting into the world, but also realize them even further by maybe conversation or feedback that I get from other people. And, I think life is really a process of attempting to figure things out. And one of the best ways we can figure things out is by talking about them. And one of the best ways to talk about things is to talk about obviously what's absolutely true to you at the time being. Now, my truth isn't necessarily the truth, and that's a major distinction that I want to make sure I make clear. Speaking my truth just means it's where I sit, where I stand, where I see things, and where I am at the moment, and I speak those into existence. Then, like I say, to take a look at what that truth is, to share that truth, to get some reflection and some perspective from others possibly. So this is a platform for me to do that, and the more and more I interact on YouTube and the more videos I make, the more of an appreciation and a respect I have for not just the platform, but the community and the opportunity that there is there to have conversation and dialogue and share information and share content and share ideas and hear opinions. It's really a wonderful opportunity to do so. And I'd really be remiss if I didn't talk about and share things that were very, I guess, somewhat personal to me, that maybe relate to things that other people can have a conversation about to learn more. And that's the thing. It seems as though I make this channel to share information for you to learn, which I do, but I absolutely am open to the opportunity and the possibility of me learning as well, and I already have. So I think the more we share who we are and what our truth is, the more we can expand that truth. But you have to be open to expanding what that truth is. But first, you have to acknowledge what your truth is and be willing to express that to others and, even to yourself, to acknowledge your truth and then speak it, I think. And then from there, maybe you modify and you adopt new ways of thinking that end up obviously altering and changing and evolving and growing what your truth is, so to speak. So that's what this channel really provided for me, an opportunity for me to speak my truth. It's an amazing opportunity to do that. And again, my truth is not the truth. It's just an opportunity to speak my truth. And that's really all that we can do as individuals. And then, again, sit back and maybe look and see how that plays out and what others have to say about it and what information comes of it. So it's kind of twofold. It's two parts. It's not only do I owe it to my viewers to be transparent, in my opinion, I owe it to my viewers to be transparent in who I am and all of who I am, as far as the person that's bringing this content, these coaching tips and strategies. I owe it to my viewers, in my opinion, to be transparent, but I also owe it to myself to speak my truth and to share what I really think and feel, and stay in line and stay in alignment with who I really am, and share that obviously with others, as well as recognize it and acknowledge it myself. One of the things that I pride myself on, if not the only thing that I pride myself on, is being real and being genuine to who I am, expressing and saying what I feel and what I think to myself and to others, with every opportunity to the best of my ability. I really do pride myself on that, and I think that speaking your truth and living a genuine, meaningful life on purpose, full of intention, and being thoughtful with what you do and what you say, and acknowledging the reality of things, I think is the quickest, the fastest, and the most noble and respectable and fulfilling way to live your life. There's no doubt about it for me that that's really the way to live the most fulfilling life and the most respectable and noble way to do so, which is to attempt to live in line with the truth and the reality, whatever that may be, which requires you to acknowledge it. Now, once you acknowledge that, you can share it and express it to then see if there's more to it to adopt and modify it and evolve that. But I think I owe it to myself and I owe it to my viewers to do that. And that's really what videos like this are an attempt to do. And this by no means will be the only episode that I upload where I explore and discuss my thoughts about religion. I have many conversations with many people that are, I believe, worthy of sharing with you and worthy of conversation that I think, again, I would be missing an opportunity if I didn't share those with you. So I fully intend on uploading and sharing more conversations similar to this one, but particularly about my ideas and thoughts regarding and pertaining to religion. Mainly, one, not so much because I've pondered and thought so much about the topic, but also because I see how much of an influence and a significance it has in everyday behavior, from talking to my students to talking to my clients to just everyday society. I see the role that it plays and the significance that it has in society and in the world. So it's obviously going to be something that I'm very interested in and I have thoughts on. So this won't be the only video that I upload or that I share with you all that pertains to conversations about the idea, the topic of religion and God. But today I'm particularly speaking to, and the inspiration for this video in particular, was to speak to the question about the belief in God. Now, this is an important question because given that I don't ascribe to any particular religion and I don't consider myself a religious man, when people learn this about me, they very often have the question, well, do you believe in God? And that brings me to my first issue with the question as it pertains to God and beliefs. And my issue is this. My issue with the question, do you believe in God, is this. To answer the question, do you believe in God, you must first answer the question of what you're referring to by God, and also possibly believe, but I'm going to focus on just God. And to do that, to answer the question of what you're referring to by God, you have to define what God is. So you can't ask if someone believes in something if there's no definition or understanding of what the thing is that you're asking them whether they believe in or not. And so this is the biggest and most important distinction for me that I want to make as it pertains to or relates to the belief in God, which is to ask someone the question, do you believe in God, to me is one of the most loaded questions one can possibly ask, because it's really an attempt to get someone to answer the question of whether or not they agree with your beliefs or whether you agree with their beliefs or have some other way of thinking. It's not a fair question in my estimation, because of it's loaded. And the loaded part is that there's no definition of God when asking the question, do you believe in God? So the first thing to answer the question, do you believe in God, the first thing that needs to happen, in my opinion, is you need to define the word God first, and then you can agree on or decide whether or not there's a belief in that thing that we have defined as God. So for the sake of conversation, let me share with you and give you my definition so that I'm better able to answer the question for the sake of conversation once again. I use the term God to refer to the energy and the force of the universe that connects all living things in existence, both known and unknown, that you can feel and experience but don't quite understand and can't quite explain. Simply put, to me, God is the unexplainable source of energy that drives and connects all forces of life. To me, that's my simple definition of God. So then the question is, well, now that we've settled on the definition, do I believe in God? And the answer is yes, I do believe in God, just not your God. I believe in God as per my definition of God, the one that I just put in front of you. That's my belief, or I should say, that's my definition. So that's where my beliefs, if you will, which I'll address that belief part here in a second, that's where my beliefs lie, in that definition of God. So the question of do I believe in God or not, or do I believe in God, the answer is yes. Unless, of course, we haven't clearly stated or defined what that God is, then obviously I'd have to do that before I answer the question. But for the sake of this conversation, now that you know my definition, you can understand maybe why I have the answer that I do, and the answer is yes. But again, that's where the I don't believe in your God comes from, because I do believe in God, just not your God. Unless by some coincidental chance you have the same definition of God that I do, but the odds or the chances of someone sharing that same exact particular belief in God when they ask me that question are very slim. So that's why, to me, it's a very unfair question, and it's a very loaded question. And you might say that it's possibly a very self-centered question as well, because the question is predicated on one's own definition or understanding of God, implying that or suggesting or presupposing that is the only God that they can or cannot believe in, or do not believe in. So again, a loaded question, and I'm not a fan of the question. Now, as far as the belief in God itself, yes, I believe in God, just not your God, unless you have the same definition as I. So to me, the better question is, do you believe in a God? Because believing in a God leaves the opportunity open for that individual to say, yes, I do believe in a God. And that implies that it might not necessarily be the same one as you or as the person asking the question. Do you believe in a God? Or even better, do you have a relationship with God or a God or your God? Do you have a relationship, whatever that is, if that's what you really want to know? But if you don't want to know whether or not they actually have a relationship with God, and all you want to know is if they believe in the same God that you do, then you need to state that question clearly, because again, a trap question to see what they believe is different than asking a question to find out if they have a belief at all, because you're curious about that. So that's my major issue with the question, and it might be taken for granted, and some might argue this and say, well, it's just semantics, but it's really not. Majority of the time, if not all of the time, whether people realize it or not, it's an attempt to put somebody in a binary position of either saying, yes, I do, which implies that they have the agreement of the God and the understanding the belief is the same as the person asking the question, or no, not at all, I don't have any belief in God, or one that's different than mine. So I'm not a fan of that. And I'm also not a fan because it doesn't clearly state or lay out the terms or the definition and the understanding of what the thing is that we're believing in. And my thoughts about that question and what it presupposes and what it implies and how it's loaded really brings me to another point that's important to me as it relates to the belief in God. And that second point is in terms of whether or not a person has a relationship with their God or a God or not. And I guess it reminds me, or it brings me to this point. I believe very strongly that a person's relationship with God is a personal relationship. And in essence, that relationship with God is only relevant and meaningful or empowering to them and them alone. It's not relevant or meaningful to be shared. It's not really relevant to other people, because each individual is unique in a sense. And so I believe if your relationship with God is personal and you're a unique individual, then all that matters is that personal relationship. So to try and share this experience or relationship with God with other people in an attempt to relate or connect to other people is counterproductive. And I think it inhibits the relationship between an individual and God when you get into human relationships and the connection and the relationship between people in terms of what they identify with each other. I think that stays at kind of a basic human person-to-person level. And I think that connection or that thing that you have in common or that commonality with other people can actually dilute and get in the way and serve as a barrier to one's true relationship from a unique and individual standpoint with God, with their God. So that's just my opinion in terms of the relationship with God. And I know this flies in the face of a few religious beliefs, which are, if you have a belief in God, then you absolutely need to share that with others. Go out and recruit, roughly speaking, and that sort of thing, which really implies get involved with other people and share the word, spread the belief, and share where you stand. I understand that, but that kind of contradicts my own personal take and my own personal relationship with God, which is, my relationship with what I consider to be God and how it helps me and serves me and empowers me. And it's a personal relationship. And I think I only benefit from having that relationship with God and not having other people involved necessarily with that relationship. So this video is not so much to explore that idea, but that is a concept that I feel very strongly about. And I think that's one of the reasons why we do see a lot of conflict and a lot of issues pertaining to religion. I think we far too often in life and in society, we publicize and we make public private events and private relationships. And whether we're talking sexual relationships, we're talking religious relationships, whatever the case would be. And those are two primary conversations that we have, even in politics, two things that primarily dominate political beliefs and political views. And to be honest with you, to me, they're the most private things that really should be left to an individual in their private lives. But for some reason, we talk about them publicly, probably because they are such private things, and we're nosy and that sort of thing. So, but I do think that a relationship with God is a personal relationship, and the only person or the only people that it's relevant to and it really matters to is you and your relationship with God. And so it's not to be shared or talked about or celebrated with other individuals in an attempt to further that relationship. I don't think it does that. Now, this does happen, but I don't think that really is in line with the true nature of strengthening your individual relationship with God. I think that process becomes more about the connection that you have to people that share your same beliefs and rituals than it does your actual connection to God, which in my estimation is one of the things that religion provides. It provides an appeal for many people, which is the connection with other people, which is something that's tangible and we can actually enjoy and benefit from tangibly. And it's not so abstract as much as this relationship that we have with God is. So in the meantime, while we're working on or we have this relationship with God, hey, we also get to connect and interact with real life people, which is also a human need at the core for all of us, whether we have a belief system that's religious or not. So I think that that's one of the many inherent appeals in terms of religion. It provides that connection with other people under the guise, if you will, well, not under the guise, but along the lines, the premise of we have the same shared beliefs in the same God, and so we have that commonality. But once again, I think that may and can possibly, for many people, generally speaking, get involved. It can become a barrier for individuals to really find and seek and grow and develop a deep connection to their own. To God and their own lives and how it relates to them personally. Another thought that I have about one's belief in God is I think that a lot of people say that they don't believe in God because they don't believe in a religious God. And so because they're not religious or they're anti-religion even, it's kind of the baby goes out with the bathwater. They say, I don't believe in God. And really what's going on there is they just don't ascribe to any religious beliefs. And I think that's very unfortunate because I believe very strongly that every person can benefit from a relationship or a connection with God in their own way, by their own doing, according to their own definition or understanding of it. But I have a very strong belief that we all can benefit from a connection with something greater than ourselves. Again, assuming that the definition consists of something greater than themselves and provides an appreciation for the nature and the complexity of life, because ultimately that's really what this relationship with the divine and the unknown and the all-knowing or something greater than ourselves or this infinite energy or source of connection that's beyond us. I think that that's really what it is. This appreciation for that would be the relationship. I think very strongly that we can connect, we can benefit from that connection. So when people say they don't believe in God because religion has rubbed them wrong or for whatever the reason is, they're not a fan of religion, I think it's very unfortunate because, again, I think it turns them away from something that they could absolutely benefit in their lives. And, of course, this is being spoken under the presupposition that you can believe in God and not be religious, which is exactly one of the things that I'm implying today, and what you can see, which is by the notion of what I'm saying and my statement and my definition of my belief in God and my definition of God, they're not in line with any particular religion, but I'm absolutely claiming that I do have a relationship with God. And so if you come from a religious standpoint, that might be blasphemy, and you might not even understand it and say, well, it's impossible, you can't. One goes with the other. And I think it's that way of thinking and that mentality that you have to be religious to believe or have a relationship with God that turns many people away and off from the possibility of even opening up to a connection with something outside of themselves, while not being religious or ascribing to a religious faith or belief system. I think that's very unfortunate. Something else with humans along those same lines, we're very unique in that we want to know everything. We're creatures, we want to know, we want answers to everything, but we also want to believe. We have this driving desire to have answers and get answers to everything. And that's why conspiracy theories exist, because if there's some unknown event that takes place and we can't explain it, no one can offer up any, factual explanation or scientific basis or even just a factual information to explain it, and we can't get answers. Well, what do? Well, I can't accept that there's no possible answer or there's no conclusion, and some nitwit comes up and connects X, Y, and Z and says, well, hey, here's a possibility. And it's absurd, it's asinine, but it's better than nothing to a lot of people. So I'd rather know something than not know anything at all. And that's how conspiracy theories get legs, so to speak. Generally speaking, that's what happens there. And so we want to know. We want to know factually, for sure. We want to know something for certain. Tell me something. I can't not know nothing. I can't not know nothing is probably a triple negative, but I cannot accept knowing nothing. That's not an acceptable answer. The unknown is scary and frightening to us as humans. We want to know. But at the same time that we want to know, we also want to believe. We want to have faith. We want to extend our beliefs to something beyond ourselves. We're so sophisticated, cognitively speaking, that we want answers to everything. But at the same time, we have this inherent appeal, once again, to connect to the divine or to the unknown. And we know that, and we can see that because we're always striving to see what the answers should be when we don't have any particular answers, and we look to the unknown and ask for a sign or a reason or something out there. Even if we don't have a belief, we tend to kind of look for guidance in something outside of ourselves. So there's a lot of evidence and there's a lot of instances in support to point to this kind of not instinct, but this drive that we have to connect with the divine or the unknown. The problem is, how do we reconcile those two paradoxical drives, the drive to know everything, but also the drive to believe in that which we don't know? It's very paradoxical. So that's what's very interesting also about humans. And so when I look at religion, particularly as far as an opportunity or a substructure to be able to try and reconcile those two beliefs, one of the easiest ways, in my estimation, for people to deal with their reality, or this dilemma particularly, is by creating an alternative reality with religion, particularly speaking, to distort or rationalize or explain away the human experience of life. So if we have a template or a blueprint or a manuscript or a how-to manual on how to believe and what to believe and why to believe it, then we're less likely to question that which we don't know or understand. And we're more likely to be able to psychologically rationalize away and accept it on some level enough to believe it. So we at that point, we know just enough to feel comfortable having faith in what we don't know. Once again, we feel comfortable enough, just comfortable enough in what we know and what we're told and what we're taught and what we've learned and what we accept and what we see. We're just comfortable enough with that to have enough faith or belief in that which we don't know. And to me, that provides the opportunity to have an acceptable belief in something that's unknown, but that also can't be questioned. So you know enough to feel comfortable believing in that which you don't know, but part of the game there is you can't question that which you don't know. You just have to chalk it up to the unknown and have faith or belief in it because of what you do know or what you have learned or what you do understand. So to me, again, that's an opportunity to really do some thinking and ask yourself, well, am I just comfortable enough with what I know to then just chalk up what I don't know to belief or faith or not question it at all? I think we should always question everything, not from a judgmental or critical or in an attempt to prove or make something be wrong, just in an attempt to find out more truths about it if possible. So questions aren't bad. So when you feel like or you are guided in a direction to where you're not supposed to question things because the knowns the explanation for the unknown is in the known, I think you get into dangerous waters there potentially, and you leave a lot of room for a disconnect. And how do we rationalize that? Once again, that's what I'm pointing out here, is that we have a process that we rationalize that those differences, and that's how we reconcile that paradox between those two things. So in terms of questions, I guess the simple question to ask yourself is, what do you believe? When you're really honest with yourself, what do you believe? What do you truly believe? And not what are you supposed to believe, but what do you believe based on what you know and what you don't know? What is it absolutely that you believe? Without any rules or any guidelines, what do you truly believe? Do you know? Can you say concretely what it is that you believe in? Not concretely what it is exactly, or concretely what exactly God is in scientific terms or in factual, concrete terms to prove to someone, but do you know? Internally, do you know what it is exactly that you believe? And then once you think about that and you question, what is it exactly that I believe? When you come up with that answer, do you truly, genuinely believe that thing? Or is that just a symbolic figure or the symbolic, is that the symbol or the symbolic object that you're supposed to have beliefs or a belief in, or the not even an object, maybe just the spiritual or divine representation that you are ascribing or directing your beliefs towards. So question what it is you believe in, and then ask yourself, when you can you identify and define exactly what it is that you believe in? And then ask yourself, do you genuinely believe in that thing? Or is that just a part of the process that goes along with all of the knowns? So you have the knowns that you believe in and that you've studied and that you accept because you know them, whether because you read them from scripture or the lines in the verse from a particular a book, or you've heard this from an expert in the field, or somebody who has the same faith and is more well versed in it, and you have the knowns in that sense, in the human sense, where you've learned or you've read or you understand something, and from there, well, part of that process is just accepting and having belief towards in a direction of this symbolic representation or this object or this divine symbol that I'm supposed to direct my beliefs towards. Is it that kind of, are you going through the motions in that sense, or do you have a definition and understanding of exactly what you believe in? That's really something that you can really ask a question about and ponder to find out what it is. Because here's the thing, and maybe this is a huge curveball, and this is where I said I was going to address the conversation or the words about God itself, or the words about the word belief itself, and questioning that before you answer the question, do you believe in God? The thing about God for me, according to my understanding and my definition, is that it's actually not a matter of belief at all. It's a matter of acceptance. So to me, God isn't something that, it's not something to believe in, it's something to know. It either is or it isn't. And so for me, it's like you can't explain life. You can't explain life itself, nor can you explain, let alone understand many things in life, but yet they happen. It happens. So how do you explain that? Well, you can't. Well, is there something that is behind that or causing that to take place? You either accept the answer is yes or no. When you accept yes, the answer is yes. Something's driving, something's connecting. There's something behind, more than just scientifically and biologically, there's something behind life and existence that I can't put my finger on tangibly, and I can't explain it. And to attempt to explain it is very self-centered and almost narcissistic, to think that we as humans, as sophisticated as we are, measly creatures on this one planet in the galaxy, in the universe, can somehow reduce and put into understandable terms and words and explanation of what God is, or I should say of what is behind. For us to be able to somehow minimize the explanation or the understanding of what's behind something as magnificent as life, to me is again ridiculously self-centered and narcissistic and naive, to put it lightly. I think that there's no way that, as sophisticated as we are, we can even begin to think that we have a clue as to what's going on or what's behind and what's driving the complexities of this thing we call life. And so to think that we have that figured out in a way that we can understand and we can completely explain is to me, again, ridiculous, to say the least. So in terms of the concept of God, to really put a word in the place of this thing that we cannot explain or understand, to use the term God, which is what I do, to put a word on this thing, this force, this driving factor that we can't understand and don't understand and are clueless about. When we do, I put that term God there as a way to accept that it is. It's not a belief in it. It's an acceptance that, yes, it absolutely is. And the proof that it is God, or that understanding or definition that I have, the proof is that life exists, that things are happening in front of you that you can't explain and don't understand. Well, the fact that I can't explain it and I don't understand it, really, to me, I'm always searching for answers. To me, that implies or suggests that there actually is an answer to it. But just because I don't know it doesn't mean I can't appreciate the fact that there's something that I don't know. So to me, it's not a matter of belief. It's like you either acknowledge that or you don't. It's not a matter of belief, really. It's just a matter of acceptance and you getting around to seeing or knowing what is or not. It's not a matter of a personal opinion or belief. It's either you have elevated yourself or evolved to the point where you are open enough to accept, yes, I see this as it is, and I don't know how to explain it, and I accept that there's something and there is an explanation that I don't know. That in itself right there is knowing. I guess you would say that would be the acceptance and the knowing of a God. So it's not a belief as much as it is a process to know or not to know. I don't know if I'm articulating that as clearly as I'd like to. That's just a recent thought that I've had in terms of this, and I thought of that when I was examining this question as far as belief. It's not a belief. I don't have a belief in God. I know what I know of the thing that I consider to be God, and I have a relationship, and I understand my place and my role inside that, the scope of that bigger connection and that bigger picture with this thing, this force, this factor called that I term God at play there. I don't claim to understand or know what that exact thing is, but I use the term God to describe that which I don't know and cannot explain. And I have a relationship and an appreciation and a respect for that thing. And I know that. It's not a belief. It's just I know life exists, and I know that life is connected, and there are consequences and actions that are beyond our understanding or comprehension or explanation, and it's knowing that those things are and not knowing how to explain them. It's knowing that is what leads me to determine that I know God and don't believe necessarily in it. It's like, do you believe that it's sunny out? It's like it either is or it's not. You could be in the room with the door closed and not know if it's sunny or not. But once you see that it's sunny, it's not a belief anymore. It's that you see it's sunny. Now, how do you explain sunlight or sun rays? Maybe one can't do that, but they know it's sunny, even though they don't maybe necessarily know how to explain why it's sunny or where the sun's coming from. So that's another, again, possibly a rabbit hole to go down or to grapple with. But I don't mean it as a rabbit hole. I mean it as really another way of thinking about and understanding this concept overall, and maybe that's means for more exploration and conversation in that sense. But that's another thing that struck me in terms of this idea of whether you believe or you know. And so to that you might say, well, I do accept God. I do accept and know God, and that's what I believe in. Well, then I would say to you, what have you accepted? What do you know? What is the very definition of the thing that you believe in? Can you define it? And if you can, what is that thing? That's the question I think you need to ask yourself. And that's where it gets tricky. Because if you can absolutely define what that thing is that you know, absolutely define it and explain it, then why is it considered God? If it's not mysterious and there's no more divine there, then why are you considering and why do you call it God? You shouldn't be able to absolutely explain it. Even my definition is a general definition for that which I can't explain. So I do have a definition of what represents God, what God is represented to me in. But that doesn't say exactly what that thing is. That's the reason why I call it God, because there's an unknown factor. So when we can absolutely say exactly what God is and we know and can put our finger on it, I think that gets tricky. But then it can't be so abstract that there's no clue as to what it is and you just say, oh, God just is. Well, what is God and what's your definition? Well, I don't know, just everything we don't know. And in what context? Relative to what? So it can't be too abstract or it just becomes just a part of your story and this part of your psychological rationale. So these aren't questions that you need to necessarily have to these aren't necessarily questions that you need to answer right now for yourself, but I think they're questions that are worth asking. And this video wasn't only to share my personal thoughts about God. It was really to encourage others, particularly those who have no belief at all, to consider the possibility of having an appreciation and a connection to something greater than themselves without being religious. That's the key. And that's really what I want to, because if you already have a belief system, if you already have a connection to God, good. As I said in the beginning, if it works for you and it makes you a better person and it doesn't negatively affect anybody else, stay with that. My concern is those who are turned away from a connection with God or something greater than themselves because of religion, or those that just haven't explored the idea or the concept of connecting with something bigger than themselves at all. That's a concern of mine. So I think that religious beliefs are a means to an end. I think they provide a foundation and a stepping stone that serves as a basis to begin to explore beliefs in spirituality and faith and connections to the divine and the universe and life. And I think it's kind of like they're training wheels to help individuals in the direction of spirituality and beliefs. Granted, they're training wheels that most individuals never take off because it's far more comfortable and familiar to leave them on. It's a lot easier that way. Not that they're a bad thing, but I think they are what they are. And I think that even if someone who is not religious doesn't have a belief in God, no matter what their angle or their avenue or their route to spirituality or to this connection with something beyond themselves is, I'm not pointing them in one direction or the other. If you find that connection with that higher, that higher consciousness or that connection to something that's greater than yourself and something that's bigger than just us, if you find that through religion, so be it. But if you're able to do that and find that connection and create a relationship and a respect and appreciation for something bigger than yourselves without religion, you can do that too. That's really something else that I'm saying at this point. And once again, certain religious individuals may have an issue with that, and they may say, well, that's not valid, or that's cheating, or that's not real. And again, that's according to their belief system. So my bigger picture here is, as an individual, how can we empower you? What do you need to do to perform better, to fulfill, to live a more fulfilling life? And if that means having a connection to something greater than yourself and not going through religion to do so, so be it. Again, you're the one that makes the rules for your life, nobody else, unless you ascribe to theirs. And again, you put on some training wheels, so to speak, and you are guided in a direction that's more comfortable and convenient and familiar to you. That's a possibility as well. But that's not the only possibility, I guess, is what I'm emphasizing at this point. Now, I've mentioned religion a number of times, and I want to point out that I have a very, very, very strong conviction about the fact that there are many, many positive aspects to religions. And I'm going to make that plural because I think that we all have something to benefit from them. So regardless of what your religion is, I know for a fact from my studies, from my experiences, and from my friends, I think that there are many potentially positive, beneficial factors that can come from ascribing to a particular religion. So, and I think that for a lot of people, many people, some would say most or all people, the positive benefits from religion far outweigh the benefits from them having no religion at all. So I just wanted to give religion a little bit of credit in terms of what it does offer and provide. It's not something to avoid or steer away from by any means. I just want to point out that there are other alternatives. That being said, it's not to avoid religion because I say it's bad, just to consider the fact that it's maybe not a necessary process or a necessary part of the process. But like I say, very, very good friends of mine are consider themselves very, very strong in their faith and their religious beliefs. And I have the utmost respect for the two of my buddies in particular that I'm thinking of. Their faith is the most important thing in their lives. It's front and center, and both of them will give you the shirt off their back genuinely, and they have for me. So, and I think that action and that character that they have and who they are is directly attributed to their religious faith or to their spiritual beliefs and to their connection, their relationship with God. I think that is what has has really influenced and impacted them in that way, that positive way. So by no means am I saying that, and I quote scripture very often. There are many Bible verses that I feel apply to everyday life and are beneficial. I mean, something as simple as the golden rule comes from the Christian Bible. So things like this, there are benefits. There are plenty of positive aspects. So I don't want it to look like, again, this is an assault or an attack on religion. By no means am I trying to take anything away from what it can potentially offer or provide. What I am pointing out is that there's no one right way for me, in my opinion, to reach the destination, or I should say, not to reach the destination, but to achieve and create a relationship with something greater than yourself, i.e. God. That brings me to another question that I've asked, or that I've contemplated, and that I want to ask you. And the question is this: is it better to believe in God or to believe in nothing at all? And you might say, well, that's an easy one. It's better to believe in God. And so the argument to that one is, really, it's better to believe in God. Where's the proof? Where's the proof that it's better to believe in God? Let's take a look at the world right now. Millions of people have a belief in God. Show me how and where that's ultimately, absolutely a positive thing. One would argue, look at all the wars. Look at the wars. Show me a war that at the core, at the root of it, wasn't or isn't right now currently based on some sort of spiritual or religious conviction. So tell me again how it's better for all of us to believe in God. Better for who? So there's the argument against that. So then you say, okay, well, it's better not to believe in God. And then to that, I would say, better for who? Better for the individual? Really? Think about not just the wars that are being taken place between individuals across the globe. Think about all of the wars that are being fought internally with the millions of individuals in this world because they have no connection or appreciation for life, for something greater than themselves, because they believe in nothing at all. Wouldn't a belief in something, a belief in God, be better for them? So that's a tricky one. Is it better to believe in God or nothing at all? I think that's one that you can really kind of wrestle with there. There's an argument, a valid argument on both sides. But I think that if we look at as an individual, how do we benefit as individuals? Do you benefit best from having a belief in God as an individual? Or do we benefit from not having any belief at all? I would fall on the side that a belief in something is better than a belief in nothing. Now, again, this goes back to my premise of I believe that a relationship or a belief in God is a personal relationship. And maybe quite possibly if we kept our relationship with God to ourselves, we wouldn't fight each other about it. We wouldn't go to war with each other about those beliefs because you might not even know what my beliefs are because my belief is between me and God. That's just my own personal take. But I think that when it comes to that conversation or that argument, is it better to believe in God or nothing at all? Those are two valid arguments on both sides. But again, for me as an individual, I think that I see and I feel and I believe actually, and I know from personal experience that I've benefited much more from a belief and a connection with something outside of myself, bigger than all of us. I've benefited much more from that than I have the idea or a time in my life where I had no belief in anything at all. And that's maybe a story for another video, which was where I first realized I was in my undergraduate program, my psychology program, and as an undergraduate, and I first realized where I had a spiritual void, and I had no belief system really, and I had no connection, if you will. And so, well, I'll tell that story some other time possibly, but I wanted to find that, I wanted to fill that void. I wanted to find out and make that connection. So I went on somewhat of a journey to do so. And I've continued to build on that ever since then and continued to add to that. And I've been on that journey ever since then. But it did start me down the path of looking for and appreciating and developing this connection and this relationship with something greater than myself. And it had nothing to do with me becoming religious or following a certain denomination or religious belief system or structure. It was just me on my own personal journey, striving towards making that connection with something other than and bigger than myself. So I can't necessarily articulate that or put that into words, but it was my journey, and it did involve striving towards a relationship with something greater than myself, and it did involve religion. But it was I say that to speak to that question of whether it's better to believe in God or nothing at all. I think that's a very, very important, a very powerful, very, very big question to ask. And I guess it depends on what we're talking about in terms of God, and it also depends on the individual. You know, the last thing I'll share in terms of the question, do you believe in God? I heard an interesting response from Jordan Peterson, who's a very well-known professor of psychology at the University of Toronto. He's also a clinical psychologist, and he has a very popular YouTube channel. But I heard his response when he was asked, do you believe in God? And he agreed. Actually, I agree with him. I didn't see this until after I formulated my approach or my opinion to the question, do you believe in God? We have similar thoughts about the question, that it's kind of, he's not a fan of the question either. But when he eventually answered the question, his answer was, I don't know if God exists. His answer was, though, he said, I act as though God exists. I conduct myself as though God exists. Does God exist? I don't know. Do you believe in God? Well, that depends on what you mean by believing. It depends on what you mean by God. But he said, I act as though God exists. I carry myself as though there is such a thing, and that thing is relative to each individual person. But nevertheless, I think that thing, there are properties and aspects of God that are pretty universal, no matter who the person is and what the definition of God is. There's some universalities, universal concepts that apply to God that we can share. And so he acts as though that concept or that thing, God, does exist in some way, shape, or form. And that would dictate and determine a lot of his behavior and how he conducts himself ethically and morally, probably more than anything else. But I think that many people that say they believe in God do that. I think they say they believe in God, but they really don't have necessarily a particular specific belief, but they conduct themselves as though a God or God does exist, as though something greater than themselves exists that is meaningful, that we should live our lives in accordance with or for. So I think that many people that say they believe in God actually don't have the belief, but they have the actions that are in line with how maybe one thinks they should live in godlike or attempt to live in a godly manner. If I stated that properly. They say they believe in God, but they really don't have any particular specific thing that they believe in, other than all the reasons to act as if God exists or not, sort of as a guide. Not a guide that they're aware of or they know of, but just of a guide that's meaningful enough to say I should conduct myself in a certain way. But you also have the contrary that exists. People who absolutely say they know what their beliefs are, and they have the strong conviction in a certain belief, and they can tell you what God is to them, what their relationship is with it, and how strong their beliefs are. But they don't have the actions, and they don't live in accordance with, they don't live in a manner that would be in line with someone who has a respect or an appreciation, or as though God exists. These are the hypocrites. These are the individuals who profess to have a belief, and they even go through the motions possibly, and they live life according to the rituals of a belief system, but their actions are not in line as though, or their actions are not as though God exists. So those who say they absolutely have a belief in God and they're adamant about the existence of God, but yet they don't act as though this is the case at all, those are the hypocrites. So this may or may not have been a lengthy video. I don't know if I'm going to chop this up and edit this, but if nothing else, I hope that I challenge you to think. I'd love to read your thoughts on what you have to say about this topic, as well as how it may relate to your personal life and your personal religious beliefs possibly, and what your views are. I hope you don't feel the need to justify or defend your own personal religious beliefs, because by no means was this an attack on one particular religion. Even if it was contradictory in terms of your own personal beliefs, feel free to maybe share the relevance in terms of what I said and what your own beliefs are. But I don't want anyone to feel the need or the drive to have to defend themselves or stand up for their own religion. If you do, I can't control that. But this is, again, just my personal take on the role of God in our lives and my personal definition and relationship to God at this moment in my life. If you do leave a comment, I'll just ask that you don't do it in a attacking, judgmental, right or wrong type of a way, and more of just a personal share, maybe your own experiences, or if it's in a question form and you have a question that's contesting something I have to say or questioning someone else in the comment section, because this is obviously a topic that I think, regardless of one's religious beliefs or personal opinions, everyone has something to say one way or another about the topic. And so that was really enough. If nothing else, my intention for this video was to speak my truth and also to maybe facilitate a conversation in a different direction or with some different points of thought, which is really, again, what's most important, is that you're thinking and you're asking yourselves questions. You don't have to come up with the answers, and you don't have to prove yourself to anybody, but for yourself as an individual to think and ask these questions and see where you are on the spectrum in terms of belief, and maybe on the spectrum of your relationship with God, and also question maybe the definition of what you have in terms of a God, and if you have any definition or any understanding or any relationship at all of these are things that I really wanted to just encourage and also share with you, so that my viewers and my subscribers and people who are interested and curious as to what my take on this huge subject and topic is in terms of the definition of God, my belief in God, my own religious views and opinions, and what I ascribe to. This maybe gives you some context as to where I stand and what my experiences have been. So that's it. That's really, I guess, a good place to stop. Again, feel free to connect with me in the comments below, and let me know what your thoughts are, and let me know if there's anything else that you would be interested in hearing about, relevant to this topic or any others. Till next time, thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Take care.